Hello, everyone. Welcome to another discussion of The White Luck Warrior. This is the second book of the Aspect Emperor series, or the fifth book of the second Apocalypse series by R. Scott Bakker. We are reading this book approximately a sixth at a time. Today, we're going to be discussing chapters 7 through 9. With me, I have the usual group of friends. Carl, would you like to start us off with introductions?
Yeah, my name is Carl Albert. I'm first-time reader of the series and obsessed with this book.
And I'm Steve, and it's my second time reading, and I don't know. I have a love-hate relationship with this book, but it's still good.
Interesting.
Just by the standards of the series, it's not my favorite.
What's your favorite in this last quadrilogy, this last
The
set of
last one.
books?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
Exciting. Okay, cool.
interesting. I thought these three chapters were fascinating. There were so many parts that wowed me in ways that I think the first book did, the first series didn't. The scale of the battles that we saw, I think it was in chapter 7, right? With the shrank, the descriptions of how they covered the entire landscape, that there was no horizon because they were filled with shrank. I loved those descriptions, and they had a bit of repetition, like Blood Meridian style, if you will, but they were so effective and they were absolutely brilliant. I've talked so many times about how I hate action scenes, but these were so effective, even I couldn't check out during these scenes. Yeah, they were brilliant. So many things that wowed me in these set of chapters. And I wanted to pose this question. Like, is it okay? Can we start on that Shrank battle? Yeah. Um, I feel like this whole cannon fodder business is interesting. Like, they make for, to me, one of the reasons that I figured out why I like these battle scenes a bit more is because on the one side we have Shrank, and then the other side we still have the naming of all the different groups and so on. But the cannon fodder aspect of the Shrank made it for a fun battle versus, oh my god, so many people are dying. So I could check out that aspect of it and just enjoy the battle. Did you guys find that too, or is it just me?
I don't know. I would really have to like sit back and think to figure out because I also enjoyed this battle more than I have a lot of the other battles, just in terms of like the actual play by play. I think on one hand, it was easier for me to follow in a big sense. I don't know why that is. If it was the repetition, if it was kind of the simplicity of like the Shrank are just sort of hoarding, onto the army. And they're split off, they're humans, but like it I don't know, it was easier to follow than a lot of the other battles, particularly in the first trilogy, where I definitely think, I mean, just in terms of just like the raw feel of the battle, this may be my favorite. Like the only other one that I really stood out to me in the same way was sort of the very final battle, the battle of Ishwal, uh, not Ishwal.
Shimei, right?
Yeah, Shimei, thank you. Um, in the thousandfold thought, that one I struggled to follow at times, but like there was a clear sort of dramatic journey there, and you got the feeling of how epic it was, and there was a lot of like twists and turns within the battle itself, and you also got these kind of more intimate glimpses with like Proyas, for example, who you also get here. And I just, yeah, I thought it was awesome the way it ended, everything with Surwa and Sorwheel, which are two very unfortunately close names, especially because Sorwheel's nickname is Sorwa, isn't it? Or something like that. Yeah, it's like, Bakker, come on, give us some slack here. But no, this was really amazing, and yeah, it was just like a real cinematic, emotional experience. And I'm with you that it definitely kind of reminded me of some of the battles in Blood Meridian, although certainly taken to a whole nother scale. I mean, this is beyond like this is the most epic of epic fantasy. Like thousands upon thousands of people colliding. It was awesome.
So I'm trying to figure out how they'll get out of this, because the way I'm picturing it, and I think this is right, it's not just in my head, there's this like small circle, the great ordeal for all its vastness, where Sorville once noticed that he's looking to the horizon and the army is going that long or that far. It's still the great ordeal. For all its vastness, is surrounded on every side by the shrank. So how are they possibly going to get out of it? There was this one section where they said 7 heartbeats. That's what they got from the witches, right? The 7 heartbeats, because that's all they can do. And after that, it will make no difference. They barely made a dent in the army. So, I don't know, in Lord of the Rings, they got out of it with an undead army showing up in the last minute. What's going to happen here?
I mean, I got the sense that they, like you're talking about, like in this specific battle or like long term.
In this specific battle, like Howard, it feels like they've been fighting for hours and they made a tiny dent in the ranks of the Shrank.
I got the sense that they, like at least the bulk of the army, had fought off the shrink towards the end there, and that I the only group that I was particularly like, I don't know how they're getting out of this, was Sorwheel's group, where it kind of felt like everyone except Sorwheel just got killed. Now I suspect that's not the case. That would be, I mean, that would be some Red Wedding shit. Like if that entire subcast of characters is just like wiped out now, it would definitely, that would be a hard hit. But I suspect there will be some more survivors. I mean, we definitely know the Mandate Schoolman's dead, right? We saw him on page get killed, and I don't know. For some reason, I mean, I'd have to go back and reread to think why I got the. I mean, I don't think the Srank are done. Obviously, they're going to come back, and there's even more of them. But
I think you're right. I think the way that scene ended, like before we switched to Sorville, was that they started singing the beggar's lament, and then they conquered just like that, and that was the end of that. I thought they were still fighting it through it, but maybe that just means that they are done. They got through the hordes of Shrank.
Yeah, at least how I read it is they kind of, it's like the, it reminds me, actually, I remember thinking as I was reading it of the, what was the word that was used in the Warrior Prophet, I think it was, where like the tide of one of the battles changed. I think it's at the very end, and it's talking about, like just the fervor, the battle lust of the Enrithi armies. Oh my God, what is the exact word they use to repeat it over and over again? It's like a thematic point. I cannot believe I'm blanking on this. Anyway, but that, basically they won because they were more passionate, and they were more like, they almost became like a force of nature. And it kind of felt like that was the same thing that happened here, in that, the humans just sort of united in this like almost like animal sense of just like pure raw power, kind of in the same way the Shrank are, but I guess humans are larger, and they have the addition of more mages and things like that, and so I think they won at the end there. Certainly not without, they took heavy losses. My question is how the hell they're going to make it all the way there, if they keep having battles like this. But I guess we'll see.
So a couple of things. I think we've talked about this before about this series being a little bit more, the writing style is a little different. I think this was more of a step by step, like it was very matter of fact. The battle was a lot easier to follow. It wasn't as long either, and I just start to wonder. I'll try not to get into Blood Meridian spoilers, but I wonder what the Shrank represent, or what they may mean to the story in a broader sense.
Yeah, it's interesting. We are invited to not sympathize, but empathize, I guess, with the Shrank when when that one was captured in an earlier chapter and tortured, and there is that level of like, well, they are like sentient creatures, maybe even sapient, and you know, that, but they are also seemingly pretty evil. I forget what was it was in the first trilogy when someone talked about, or was it just us joking around talking about like domesticating Shrank? Is that something that actually happened in the books, or was that just us memeing? I don't remember, but like that idea, like it, you know, it's a question. Like, can you? I mean, these are like living creatures. Can you domesticate them? You know, like humans domesticated wolves. I don't know.
When they come across the what's her name, Mimara lookalike, the consult, felt like they were recognizing consult for the first time. So, do the Shrank not know of the consult?
I don't think they've been controlled by them in a while, or at least the majority of the horde, because they've been kind of wild, right? They certainly used to be, right? In the first apocalypse, that's what they were created for. You know, that's where we even get like the term horde for them when they're like amassed into an army, which they don't naturally do. I guess they naturally more like smaller bands, you know, not to go back to wolves, but like kind of like wolf packs. Actually, maybe it's appropriate I keep going to wolves because I think they're described as having lupine features in some way. Maybe I'm making that up. I don't know. Oh, they have dog bodies. That's what it is.
Yeah.
They have the body of a dog.
Interesting.
Or like the chest, like the inward, you know. I don't know.
Speaking of who's controlling the Shrank, we find out the non-men are controlling the Shrank. Is that surprising to us? I feel like it is, right? That they're the ones driving the Shrank horde. Did we know about that before?
I mean, insofar as we saw at least some of the non-men among the consult, but I guess I'm not shocked. I mean, that's interesting. I want to know who these non-men are, certainly, and like, you know, I'm increasingly curious about their story and where they came from as we know more about the non-men. But um, in some ways, it just also makes sense too, because like, who else is going to be the captains or commanders or generals? You know, the higher ups in this rank armies. You know, considering that there are only two of the Inkeroi left, and you know, I guess there's still the open question of like, are there any humans left fighting for the consult? That's one thing I don't know if we know yet.
Yeah.
I don't remember seeing any, but please correct me if I'm wrong.
I don't recall seeing any. Some other favorite bits from the battle, I loved the description of the witches, how they fought, how their dresses opened up like flowers, they were like bars of light lighting up, like what, the bar of heaven. And it turns out that this is a no stick school, which is interesting, right?
Yeah. What's the name of the witch school?
I forget,
Starts with
something
an
starting
S.
with an S.
Yeah. That's all I remember. It's hard to keep track of all of these words.
But yeah, I wonder how. So it's the power of the no stick school minus the nightly terrors. So they have to be a formidable bunch.
Yeah, that sounds like a good good deal.
And I am, for some reason, super interested in the founding of it. Did Kellis impart the no stick knowledge to them that would allow them, or did he demand that the mandate schoolmen do so?
Maybe a little both. I mean, I feel like Kels is probably too busy to like teach them all himself. I wouldn't be surprised if he specifically mentored, you know, his daughter, for example, and maybe some of the earliest witches. But I have to imagine the mandate did the majority of the training there. Just because, you know, just in terms of like time commitment, Kellis has got to be super busy, you know.
Yeah, I meant more like the first few, like seeding the school. Would Kellis have done that? But yeah, might be some combination of the two.
Yeah, I think he established the school, and there was some priest or somebody who trained the students there, the witches.
Yeah.
There's definitely it's interesting. There's definitely room for like stories to be told in the time gap. Like there's some interesting struggles going on in the unification wars and the rise. Not that I'm saying like Bakker, I desperately need to read this. Like I like kind of having the mystery and to fill in the blanks, but like there is some interesting drama, interesting stories, interesting questions there. As you're kind of bringing up, Varsha. I'm So something that just occurred to me is if we're playing with Lord of the Rings parallels. So I was thinking about like, okay, which humans are turning on other humankind to join Sauron. I mean, the consult, and like things like that. Like, if there are any more Lord of the Rings parallels, which I would be shocked if we've seen the last of them, who is a potential candidate for a Saruman figure? Like, is a Camion potentially going to work against Kellis and be like a traitorous wizard? I mean, he already is kind of working against Kellis. This is me just completely spitballing a theory, but I was just thinking of like, I don't know if he would go, because like Saruman, the interesting thing that I think is highlighted more in the books, even in like than the movies, is like he's kind of working with Sauron, but he's not like specifically like serving Sauron. Like Sauron's kind of the ultimate big bad, but he's like Saruman is his own like faction, you could say. And I wonder if a Camion is going to fit into a sort of similar role. Although that would then imply, I guess, that like a Camion would get Sranc under his control, which I don't really see happening. But I don't know. That's just a crazy theory I'm throwing out. I'm sorry Dan's not here to hear me throwing shit at the wall.
That would make Kellis Gandalf, wouldn't it?
He kind of is. He's kind of Gandalf, kind of Aragorn.
Mm.
I mean, certainly
Fair
a Camion
enough.
was more of the Gandalf figure in the first trilogy, but like, what if Gandalf decided, Aragorn was a piece of shit and, wanted to kill him and was a false prophet and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, I like that. I'm holding out for that undead army.
Yes.
That's what I'd like to see. Who are the undead in this world? We'll bring some demons from hell. That's who we'll bring.
I was going to say, I feel like it's demons, right? In this universe, that's what would line up with everything we've seen world building wise. We have seen sort of ghosts, but it doesn't seem like they don't like murder people. They kind of just like appear or sort of are like almost illusory figures. When there's like kind of a blending between hell and the world, like we saw in the Plains of Mangetta, is that? And then also when in Silagis,
The seal that wasn't a seal showed up.
right?
Which Mamara remembered today for some reason, like in these chapters.
It was the Swayal Sisterhood. It's cool.
There we go. Swale Sisterhood. That's right.
Yes. I will probably forget that by next time unless it comes up 20 more times. But so,
Any other thought on that chapter? We want to move on to what for me was the most exciting chapter of the bunch, even though it was much more intimate.
just one thing. I think the Proyas v. Kellis conversation at the very beginning of the chapter.
Oh yeah,
You're
right. That's how could we skip my boy Proyas?
In which Kellis removed Proyas' doubt by asking him to doubt. It seems like, at least superficially.
That fucking guy, Kellis.
I love
He
the
literally like
contradiction.
Proyas was like starting to see the light, and of course the way he gets him is like, yes, exactly. That's what you should be doing. That's why I keep you around. You're so right to doubt me and the cause, and it's like not using his doubt against him.
That was his one holdover from a Camion, right? And and I love the I forget it now. I read it almost a week ago, but the description of his childhood with a commune. I think the fact that as a teacher he took him seriously, not dismissed him as a child. I think that's the general impression I have left from that. But yeah, that was really good. I'm curious to see. I would like more Proyas in the upcoming chapters or the remaining 2 books. See where this relationship goes.
I agree.
Steve's smiling mysteriously.
Maybe he'll be around.
Oh no! When you put it like that, is he gonna die?
I don't know.
I have no doubt he's going to die. There's no way he lives out this final set of books. But that said, I hope he gets a good death, and I hope we get him at least for a while longer. Proyas just has like heroic death written all over him.
As far as sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I actually wouldn't even be surprised if he doesn't make it to Golgotha, if he like dies in like one big battle, like help hold the line or something. I don't know. I would like to see him go all the way, reach Mount Doom, but I don't know if he will. I'm latching onto him now as a Samwise Gamgee figure. I don't know why, but that's the parallel I'm making. He's just so loyal.
Again, Kellis, that would make Kellis Frodo. So Frodo, Gandalf, why you gotta kill all my favorite characters like that?
I blame it on Bakker. He's determined to take all of our favorite fantasy tropes and characters and make them just the most horrible thing you can imagine.
Okay.
So another thing that I thought was interesting from that chapter was Sorwhale being chosen for the gods, chosen by the gods to kill.
Yes. Oh yeah.
Which does that? I mean, I know we sort of ruled out that Sorwhale has nothing to do with the White Luck Warrior because the White Luck Warrior is so far away and having some mad thoughts by himself as he's walking his way through wherever. But that echoes what we saw in the previous italicized segment where he sees the Aspect Emperor dead, the White Luck Warrior, right? So
yeah.
So that I forget who it was that had the theory that the White Luck Warrior isn't a person but sort of like a soul or spirit that's moving through people and will eventually arrive at Sorwhale. I think I'm liking that theory more now.
I definitely felt like this set of chapters confirmed that. I mean, it seems like I'm certainly open to the idea that Bakker is going to pull the rug out from under us at the end. But it seems like we're just watching a very slow bullet in action. And yeah, we're watching the White Luck Warrior switch from host to host and is going to end, presumably in the last book, in Sorwhale, who's going to kill Kellis. And I'm curious if Bakker, I think it would be very interesting if he doesn't like subvert our expectations in any way, and like literally he tells us here what's going to happen, and like that is just what happens. Like if it's just like, yep, this is the gods at work, what are you going to do?
Yeah,
even Kellis isn't beyond their power.
I'd like that. I would very much. On the subject of Sorwhale, the other thing that was interesting was immediately after declaring himself a non-believer king, like to Soranga, he convinced him that, like he just called me out, I don't know why. He realizes that Kellis's battle is real, that it's not a made-up cause. I think he was coming to that realization in the previous chapters, but now seeing the hordes of Sranc, he really realizes that. So I'm very curious to see how these two aspects of him are going to conflict with each other later.
And the other part of that, right, is that, and him being like blessed by the gods, is that Kellis can't see through him. Kellis can't read him. None of the Dunyan can read through him, or anyone trained in the Logos. They think they can, but he is protected, which is really interesting. One, because that he's the first person we've ever like known that that's a thing, and two, it definitely recontextualizes that scene at the end of the last book. I think that's literally how the last book ends. And he's like, Kellis got played basically, and he doesn't know it. and he has this, you know, this weapon in his midst that he, you know, Callus is really intelligent, so I wouldn't be surprised if he, I guess that's where I'm at the end of, you know, this reveal, is wondering, like, is Callus, even though he maybe can't read Sorwheel's emotions accurately, is he still appropriately wary of Sorwheel and aware of the idea that he is competing against the gods? You know, like, I mean, he talks with Proyas. You know, there is a discussion that he knows that the gods have different views, different, you know, motivations, different goals, and that some are fighting against him. And I wonder what his contingencies are to deal with that, because he very clearly believes that they exist, rightfully, seemingly. And, you know, if you have a bunch of gods, you know, these higher beings coming at you, like, I almost feel like the way you have to combat that as a mortal is to team up with another god. But I don't know. I don't know what Kellis's plan is here. You know, what's the strategy? And I guess we'll see if he has one. I mean, I'm sure he has something, but is it good enough?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Yeah, the rumors of him having been in hell and all of that, I think, yeah, hopefully we'll find out more about that. Maybe he's made a deal with... it sounds like from the conversation we see between the Satma Nanaferi and the Fanial, is that his name? That one god's heaven is another god's hell. I don't know if I'm reading too much into that, but it does sound like you have to sort of be pulled into... if you don't worship that god, and if you get pulled into their heaven, that might just end up being your hell, it seems like. And not because the god is going to make you suffer for not believing in them. It's just like not where you wanted to go when you died. But yeah, that should be interesting to see if he made a deal with any of the gods. So what he called hell could very well be, you know, just the realm of one of the gods that he got help from, maybe. Sorry, one last thing before we move on to this next chapter, like Carl's reading to. The beggar's lament, it's the way that's named, it is interesting. Like, I did wonder, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense if, because it's the beggar's lament and Yatwar is the goddess of the beggars and the slaves and so on, all the weak, if that's what saved them from the shrank, the beggar's lament. But then given how she's against Kellis, that doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. But that was a curious song to have them win the battle with.
Yeah, I didn't even think about the divine intervention aspect of that. If that in any way encouraged or empowered her to help protect them. I don't think it's impossible that Yatwar wants Kellis to fall, but doesn't necessarily want mankind to fall. I mean, we know she doesn't. The gods are not pro no god, right? Because the no god is their oblivion, and so, wow, the gods really are sort of competing against themselves. It's occurring to me. Their own best interest is like to support Kellis, even though he's an asshole. That's, you know, kind of the same, I guess that's sort of the same, you know, issue we have as the readers, is it's like, well, someone's got to do it, you know, someone has to stop the no god and the, you know, whatever the no god is and the consult, and probably like wipe the last of the Inkaroi out. Damn. Baker's really asking questions with no easy answers here.
Yes.
It's interesting that all of these characters, it's very Shakespearean, or going back even older to, like, you know, Greek tragedies, which we know, like the Iliad, for example, influenced this series, and, you know, a lot of the old classics. Baker talks about like trying to evoke those stories in his like writing style, and, you know, when he's writing battles, that's why he like mentions all the factions, right, as to be the sort of like pseudo history. But it's very like of those types of stories that these characters are like their own downfall, even the gods, right? Because if the gods stop Kellis, and Kellis is their one hope of preventing the no god from coming, then I mean, they're sabotaging themselves just for ego, seemingly, right? Like, because it doesn't seem like Kellis can like kill the gods. It seems like only the no god can kill the gods. So if Kellis is trying to, like, they should be helping him, but because he is a false prophet, they're like, screw you, we're going to kill you instead. It's and then, you know, the same thing with Kellis. I'm sure Kellis is, you know, writing his own doom as we speak. I mean, clearly he is. He's like doing the false prophet bullshit, and it's going to lead to him getting killed one way or another.
Is it possible that the gods have reason to think that what Kellis is doing isn't going to prevent the no god's rebirth, but rather cause it? You know, like the prophecy stories often do, that you try to prevent a prophecy from happening, and that's what brings about the events the prophecy is predicting. Not that we're dealing with a prophecy here, but, you know, something to that effect. What he's trying to prevent might actually end up being caused by the actions he's taking, and that's what they're trying to stop. But yeah, I think overall the reason for the gods' antagony, is that the right word? Is that the word I'm looking for?
Antagonism?
Yeah, towards Kellis seems strange.
Well, I want to continue off of that. So, like, you're talking about, you know, the kind of classic trope of by trying to avoid the prophecy, you make the prophecy happen. If, like, you know, we wondered before, well, why didn't they stop Kellis earlier? And I guess you could go into the idea that they exist, you know, in a sort of four-dimensional way, so that, like, any individual moment or even, like, span of years isn't as important to them as, like, the long-term picture. So, you know, they weren't that worried about Kellis initially. Like, it just, like, wasn't, that's just not how they perceive things. It wasn't, you know, a big enough concern. But another possibility is that Kellis, they couldn't foresee Kellis because he's connected to no god, and they can't foresee the no god. And we already know Kellis has some sort of weird connection with the no god, right? He's been dreaming of the no god. Like, that's the earliest visions he's had. And so I wonder if there's some sort of, like, I don't know if like the idea is like the no god comes out of Kellis somehow, or like whether that's in like a literal sort of like literally inhabits his body or something, or like the no god, something that Kellis does is what makes the no god happen. And so Kellis, through being intrinsically tied to the no god, is also in sort of a blind spot for the gods. And so they couldn't stop him until he was already, you know, risen to power.
Yeah.
And then continuing that train of thought, then the idea of, like, you know, by trying to stop Kellis, they end up leading to Kellis doing something that makes the no god happen. That would be very Greek tragedy. I don't know. I think that's an interesting idea you put forward, Varsha.
There's many layers and levels. So the gods think that Kellis is going to bring about the no god, but maybe he might stop them if the gods didn't interfere. So many interactions of, like, trying to, you're bringing about the thing you're trying to prevent, which when done well, I don't dislike it so much, especially in prophecy stories. I intensely dislike it, I've come to realize, because it's too blatant and on the nose. But this one is interesting if that's what's being worked at in the background. I think that would be a very interesting weaving of the story.
I'm a fan of the trope generally, especially if it's done in an unexpected way.
Yeah.
But this is, I mean, it is, if that is how it plays out, this is an additional spin on it, right? That because it's the gods too making that happen, right? And the idea that, like, it's not just that they heard a prophecy, which is how it normally goes, right? Is like the hero goes to an oracle, the oracle tells them this thing, the hero's like, no, I'm not going to let that happen, so I'm going to, like, you know, kill these people, and oh no, by doing that I get someone to come back and kill me, or some bullshit like that, right? In this case, it's like they see the threat, they want to, you know, like in the future multiple times, like not just in the future, like all at once, right? Because they view things, it's just like a more four-dimensional, almost like sci-fi way of doing it, right? Where it's like, it's not time travel and it's not prophecy. It's like, it's just like, it just is. Yeah. It's determinism, as we've talked about, right? It's like this idea that they know this thing is coming, and, you know, they're like, well, we're going to stop it. But they don't realize that them trying to stop it is, I mean, it's the same idea, but like presented slightly differently. It's hard to express, but
No,
Yeah.
I think that makes sense, and I agree with you. It isn't done like quite so, like, it's what I call blatant before. Maybe it wasn't the right word, but it's not very clear as the story is unraveling that, they are clearly taking the path that will bring about the prophecy. It's more that it's all unintentional. It just happens because it is, like you said. So, all right. So, since we're talking about determinism and so on, we can probably start the next chapter. What path would you like to talk about first, Carl?
I mean, the number one thing for me is just the climax of it all. I was so stressed and so excited. I could not. My eyes were glued to the page with Inrilatas and Nathanet and Kelmomas. It was just one of the best scenes I've ever read. Just period, like end of sentence, any book, any series. I just thought it was phenomenal. The twists and the turns, and then the way it all ends. Like, you keep thinking it's going to go one way and then it goes somewhere else, and it all makes sense. Like, it all fits. Even though we still have some questions, right, of like, ultimately, why did Inrilatas do what he did? And, I think it's very possible we'll never really know. We'll only be able to interpret. I mean, I guess I'll start there. What do you think? Like, based on, I don't know, I don't know if we ever get answers later on, so I don't know if Steve can answer, but what are your thoughts, Varsha, about why Inrilatas acted the way he did?
So the default reasoning that I don't think I have a better answer than this actually is that he has been maybe suffering all the yelling and screaming, his fits of passion. The times we saw him, what's the word I'm looking for? When he's clear-headed and he's like cruel, you might think that he's like careless and everything's fine and he can go on living like this forever. But maybe he's been suffering with his like what fits of passion, and he saw this as a way out, and he set it up so that Nathanet would kill him. So, like, I mean, I think it's pretty reasonable to assume that Inrilatas wanted to be killed, not that he was trying to kill Nathanet. I don't think that was his goal. I think he wanted Nathanet to kill him, and that's why he attacked him. As for why he revealed Kelmomas' nature to Nathanet, the optimist in me thinks it's because he wants to protect Esmenet from the kid, but I don't know. I don't know if that's true.
He's no.
Go ahead.
I was going to say,
please,
I
Steve.
just feel like he's such a tragic character with the heart of Nathanet and the intellect of Kellis. It's to have both of those personalities, both of those traits in one person. That must be like torture to not be able to control it. And it doesn't seem like he had. None of the kids have. Doesn't seem like many of the. Well, some of the kids have had training, but didn't seem like he really ever really had a chance because he doesn't know how to control the Dunyan side of him, and he's also has the heart of Nathanet. So it's, or I'm sorry, of Esmenet. So it seems like he's just been screwed from the very beginning.
Right. Absolutely. No, I mean, yeah, tragic is absolutely the right word for his character. And I definitely think, that the way that he is described, right, is having Esmenet's heart, essentially meaning that he can feel profound empathy and profound compassion. And what that does to someone when you can like read their inner darkest secrets, like, yeah, I have to imagine that's incredibly painful where you're driven, you're both like beyond the world and of it. And the thing I'm struggling with is like, he must know that in trying to kill Nathanet and in doing so leading Nathanet to kill him, that he is playing into Kelmomas' hands and is going to make Nathanet, who is maybe the most capable person of defeating Kelmomas in the Empire at this point, short of Kellis, obviously, or maybe even the older siblings. But, the people who are actually present to deal with Kelmomas, to me, it seems like he's sabotaging their ability, Maithanet's ability to do so. And so, I'm struggling with because I agree. I think, is it just this purely emotional, selfish drive of this is my moment to die finally, to be free of this mortal coil? Or does he have a broader plan is what I'm wondering, right? Is there something he's planning? Is he actively trying to fight Kelmomas in some way? Or is he trying to get what he wants and also still in some ways defending Kelmomas, just feeling some base instinctual love for his brother, even though he can see his brother's a monster? Or, and again, the big question mark for me is we're led to believe, although it's unclear because we're never in Inrilatas' head, that he loves his mother, right? And we're told he has her heart. And if he feels that sort of empathy, that sort of emotion, if he can relate to people, relate maybe isn't the right word, but feel what other people feel and connect with them on that level, then surely he does love his mom, right? Because clearly she loves him so much. And beyond that, it's that's human nature, right? To form that animal attachment. And so isn't he sabotaging her by letting Kelmomas run free and harming the one person? I'm struggling to, I get he's quote unquote mad. And certainly to a degree that is an appropriate way of describing him and his behavior. But I'm just I'm just unclear on does he have a plan? Does he not have a plan? Was he thinking multiple steps ahead? He's smart enough to, and we just don't see it yet. Because presumably he can he's untrained, but he can probably help, make plans, right? And, in the same way that he planned for this to some degree. I don't think this was a spontaneous decision. I think he went into this conversation knowing what he was going to do. Does he believe that by having Maithanet kill him, that is going to lead to, and then therefore Maithanet becoming an outlaw or becoming exiled? Is that going to lead to Kelmomas' downfall? And therefore, his mother's safety or the empire's safety? I don't know. I'm really not sure what to think.
So Maithanet, Esmenet tried to get him arrested and nobody would raise a finger against him, right? So is it possible that he isn't really in danger and so of exile or execution? And Inrilatas knew that, but now Maithanet knows about Kelmomas and he would... that's what I'm looking for. Yeah, and so he would maybe somehow protect Esmenet from the kid by revealing to her his nature. Although I think that would be a harder blow than whatever Kelmomas would do to her.
I just feel there's no way that this ends without Esmenet and Maithanet being irreconcilable. And therefore, Maithanet is a threat to Esmenet. And if he loves his mother, I don't know why he would make that happen, right? Even beyond defeating Kelmomas, if you care for your mother at all, would you not try to, you already know you're going to cause her pain. And again, I guess that's the question, right? Is does he actually, just the way he's described, I feel we have to believe that he does have some affection for her. And, that's part of the reason that he abuses her the way he does, is because he loves her in his own fucked up way. And so I don't know. We'll see where the story goes. It's certainly too early to tell. That was just my big question mark coming out of that scene, which again, I thought was just an all-time great, easily among the best of this series and, really any series I've read. I just perfectly done.
Yeah, I agree with you. I loved that scene as well. I was talking earlier about how all these chapters had moments that wowed me, these 3 chapters in particular, and I think in this one it was that conversation between the 3 of them. We talked a little bit, at least I was a little dissatisfied about the conversation between Kellis and Moengus, right, at the end of the first trilogy, where it felt like it had too much detail for it to mean like a Dunian conversation, in my opinion. But this one, I think, was perfect. First, the Inrilatas Kelmomas one we saw before this, and then now these three guys, where basically they dropped all pretense that they usually keep up, and they go to the hard-hitting facts. I think that was brilliant. And yes, I was on the edge of my seat, and I read late into the night for this particular chapter. To your point about whether or not Inrilatas had some sort of plan, he seems to know things that we have no idea how he knows, right? Like when he brings up the thousandfold thought. And there was one other thing as well that he mentioned, which if he's that isolated, how is he getting this information? Which makes me think that you may be right about the fact, like, I didn't think he had any long-term motives out of whatever this is, other than I want to die. But I also lack the imagination to think beyond that. But this makes sense to me that he might have a long-term plan, given that he has access to information that maybe he doesn't otherwise. So is he like Kelmomas in that he has been acquiring information, has his own web, and has been manipulating it somehow? We also find out about the tunnels and stuff that Kelmomas has been roaming. Is it possible Inrilatas also used to or does go around there and gather information the same way Kel did?
Maybe. Another idea that may be connected or not, I don't know. And I don't know how we would ever find out. But Kellis, the way or a point of view of at his visions as they've been described to us is like he went mad and started seeing things, right? And those visions may be real. They are. To me, it seems pretty clear that they're real. To whatever accuracy or degree, I think is maybe more debatable. But he clearly has like actual magical visions. Maybe Inrilatas does too, right? Like I don't. He is seemingly mad, but he is his father's son. And, again, that mad description, it's the same way that Moengus describes Kellis. And so obviously Kellis is much more functional as a human being. But I don't know. That's just something to throw out. Is like maybe he has some connection to the outside as well and can see the future in glimpses of his own. And maybe he has a connection to a god. And he may not even realize it. I don't know. I'm completely spitballing here. But that's just an idea.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's also strange a little bit. I think maybe not really, but that Serva is the only one of Kellis's children who can do magic. So have the others not been taught, or is it that they weren't born with the ability? And Kellis, was he able to acquire sorcery because is it a genetic thing? I don't know. Do we know how people become sorcerers in this world? Is it just by learning what they need to, or do they need to have some innate ability? It sounds like the former based on what we know of Mimara and Serva, but is it strange that these are the only children? Well, Serva is the only one who can do magic.
I guess I had sort of taken it for granted that Cayutas could do magic, but I guess you're right. We haven't seen him do it, so maybe have we? I guess he doesn't do magic, huh?
Any idea who the voice or what the voice is that Kelmomas is hearing?
I've sort of settled on Samarmus, like the evil in Samarmus, but...
Oh, really? No, I think it's for sure a god.
Some god?
I think for sure a god. I don't know which god. I think Ajokli makes sense just because of the ties between them, but I am basically like convinced at this point. I just feel like that's not like some weird psychological pseudo magical thing. Like I think it's like fully the divine intervening to lead to Kellis's downfall.
Do you think then it's something to do with Yatvar? Because I keep noticing how every time we get a Kelmomas section, it is preceded by something to do with the White Luck Warrior or Satma Nana Fairy. That could just be like a structural thing because all those things are together in the same chapter usually. Or it could also mean something like in the god department that Kelmomas keeps hearing.
I'm reminded, we literally get a scene. I think it's one of those scenes of Nana Fairy where she talks, or like maybe it's the White Luck Warrior's point of view. I forget. But they like realize that they can see inside the Imperial Palace and they're like sitting on the Empress's lap or something. There's some scene like that literally happens in these chapters where to me it became, that was like confirmation that Yatvar, oh God, I wish I could remember what it was. I read these a couple weeks ago. But there's literally a scene where it's like, they're like, yeah, we are inside the palace and like at the Empress's breast. Shoot. I didn't read ahead. So that's not something that happens next. This is, I'm going to find this now.
Okay. I don't recall it, but that would be super interesting. I may have just read past it, but yeah.
It was pretty like, it was like a line or two. So it wasn't like a whole section.
Yeah. And
we can move on while I'm looking this up.
Kelmomas once.
Oh, yeah. Okay, here it is. It's the opening of 8. It's the White Luck Warrior. So the ending, he saw the piling of structured marble beauty that was the Endymion Heights, his eyes roaming until they found the famed veranda behind the Aspect Emperor's throne room, where the gift of Yatvar glimpsed himself peering back, the Holy Empress beside him.
Okay.
The gift of Yatvar, meaning, right, the White Luck Warrior, as we've been led to understand. And, who is beside the Holy Empress? That has to be Kelmomas, right? Like, unless, I guess that's just one way to read it. I guess maybe there's other possibilities, but, like, that's the only person I can imagine who's sitting directly next to...
That makes sense.
Esmenet.
Oh, I like that. I don't like that, but I like that. Because I've been, again, this is the optimistic side of me, but I've been thinking of the White Luck Warrior as a force for good. I don't know why, but, and if they're secretly dictating to Kelmomas, which brings up all sorts of questions, like why did Yatvar make Kelmomas kill her priestess, right? That's who he killed, apart from Samarmas. So and that was done through the voice in his head. That's what egged him on to do that. So if that's true, then I don't like Yatvar very much. So far, I was with her. Like, yes, the goddess of the weak, the slaves, everyone can worship her and feel strong and feel powerful somehow. And this would very much change my mind about that.
I think that's, yeah. I think that this is a consistent through line for Bakker in general, that like these people and entities in power, those with the that are sort of beyond ordinary people, the great, you could say, ultimately view those who are in some material way beneath them as undeserving of respect or compassion, or as just like pawns. And, obviously you see that with Kellis, you see that with any number of kings and emperors and people like that. But, I think that's also, right, like you want to cheer for Yatwur because of what she's the goddess of, and also because she's combating Kellis, and we hate Kellis. But then you're also like, oh, but she kind of sucks too, you know, in the same way that you kind of want to cheer for Kellis because you're like, well, he's fighting the consult, and the consult are the bad guys, but Kellis is also, you know, a bad guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's tough. And even a Camian, right? Where you're like, I want to support this guy, but he's not doing very morally upstanding things.
No.
And his end game, who is it going to help? Like that, he's just pursuing his revenge. Like he's not making the world a better place, you know? There's nothing noble about what he's doing. He kind of lies to himself, but like, what if he really wants to like dethrone Kellis or like expose Kellis? I don't know that just like destroying him strictly is like, I feel like to me his plan is pretty simplistic, and in that simplicity, you know, of just destroying Kellis, like it doesn't tackle, you know, the other enemies that they're facing, and you know the nuance of the position, which I think we have like a quote about that at the beginning of one of these chapters about ambiguity and complexity and how fancy. I don't know. We can get to that when we talk quotes.
Yeah. The Akamian, to your point about not being an upstanding citizen right this moment, he killed a bunch of people because he doesn't want them to bring word back to the Great Ordeal that he's there with a bunch of the skin eaters, right? And also to your point about revenge and his plan being simplistic, what is the shape of the revenge that he is envisioning? Because let's say he shows up at Ishwal, then what? If he's already written a book that nobody is reading about the origins of the Aspect Emperor, and it's being shut down and whatnot, but let's say it was widely circulated. Look at the size of the Great Ordeal. Do you really think you can change the mind of that many people who have been indoctrinated into this religion? And if that is not your goal, which it seems unlikely that it is, what is? Is he trying to figure out a way to kill Kellis? But why does he need to do that then? Yeah.
That's how I've interpreted it, is he just at this point is like, I have to figure out Kellis's weakness and then exploit it and bring him down. And he's not like really caring or thinking, giving much thought to everything around Kellis and everyone around Kellis. It's just simply find out what Kellis is, find out how to break him, and then do that. Because you're right. Like what is his end game? You know, what's the shape of it? You know, we know I think he's explicitly thought or said that he wants to destroy Kellis, but like, what does that actually mean? Yeah. You know, and I think part of it is just he doesn't know, because he doesn't know what the Dunian are. He doesn't know where Ishwal is. He doesn't know what their weakness is. You know, how to stop Kellis. And so he's uncertain. I think that's part of the issue. But like for someone who thinks and thinks and thinks is like, you know, it's a notable aspect of his character, you know, being this intellectual, he's really not giving this much thought. No. You know, he has this it's hardly even a plan, you know. He just like gave himself a couple goals and was like, and then I'll destroy Kellis. And it's like, okay, well, sure, like easier said than done, buddy.
He's got a plan for a plan. Like we use date for a date. He's got a plan for a plan.
Yeah. God.
Yeah. Speaking of that group there, I guess the most interesting thing to me from the third chapter was how the Kiiri, how are we pronouncing it? The Kiiri, how that's affecting them. And I think, again, this chapter was really interesting because I think it's fairly obvious that their apathy and indifference, their inability to feel anything with any sort of passion, is coming from the Kiiri, but there's a mild possibility that it's also the exhaustion that driving them to be like that. it becomes clear towards the end that it's entirely this drug thing. But
I mean, I think there's room for their exhaustion to play a role, because I think you're right. That's very human, to be so tired that you just stop caring. You know, like that is kind of what happens to people. You know, I don't know that it numbs you entirely and makes you kind of almost like we I don't know that this is the right word, but like sociopathic. You know, you stop caring about other people, stop connecting. But the Kiiri certainly just like makes that worse and exacerbates that issue. And I think it's interesting that it sort of makes sense just on a base mechanical perspective, because it's sort of turning them into non-men. By consuming non-men, that's kind of they start to like think and feel like non-men think and feel. And so there's, you know, it's obviously there's some like magical aspect to it, but like it's a magical aspect that like I'm a fan of soft magic, but I like something like this where it's like you're kind of taking something that feels almost like biological and translating it in this weird like sort of science fiction way. It's cool. And I also want to say, I think I called that like last podcast or the one before that Kiiri was like, I think I maybe even said non-men body parts or something.
Pretty close.
So feeling pretty good about that.
Yeah.
I did not guess it was Kiiri Sinjoy. That I couldn't even begin. That's pretty crazy. If Mimara is right, because we don't get explicit confirmation, but I feel like we're supposed to just be like, yeah, you know, that makes sense.
Do we know who that guy is? Sorry.
He's like the big non-man king.
Okay.
He's like the guy who was like leading the fight against the consult, and was like, he's in like a lot of their legends.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. So how creepy was that scene where the non-man came up to Mimara and then asked her to figure out whose ashes these are, and then she does, apparently, by looking within herself somehow. And also I'm like super terrified for this group now, because he's gone from just handing out the Kiiri to making declarations of love for this group. And we're like, when is he going to set them all on a fire?
Well, and the thing you haven't mentioned yet too is Esminet's attracted to him. Esminet like wants him. She wants to sleep with him, and maybe is developing like weird fucked up feelings beyond that. And I cannot. What's crazy is I kind of like it. I kind of want them to like hook up, but I don't know why. It's like there's something like, yeah. When they first started, it was like early in this book where like we first started seeing that develop in her POV, and I was like, I kind of dig it. I'm here for it. That's so weird. I like it. And we're now seeing that like explicitly develop, and part of, I guess, what's interesting is like it's like falling in love with a vampire. Like you're like, this thing is going to kill me.
Twilight done right.
Yeah, exactly. Like there's no turning into a non-man. There's no turning into you're dead. Apparently he just kills you. So Harutro.
Dangerous.
He loves you so much he kills you.
Biggest romance. Non-man romance.
Yeah. I was really sure that Mimara would end up with, or not end up with, like have some sort of affair with the captain, Kosoter. But this is far more interesting and terrifying, I have to say. But interesting nevertheless. Yeah,
agreed. This is way more interesting. I'm here for it. It's got that gothic, like there's something very gothic about it that I quite enjoy. And it's a trope, right? The beautiful young woman and like the pale, like uber old man. Like normally it's done in a way where it's not meant to be creepy. And so, you know, like Twilight, where you're like, she's in high school and he's like 200 years old. Like what's going on here? But like here, it's like, it's clearly meant to be creepy. And that's part of what's so fun and like interesting about it.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree.
Also, she's a grown woman, admittedly, too. She's not like 16. She's like 30 something.
30 something. Yeah. Was it here that we had the recounting of the childhood? No, that was in the previous set of chapters. But before we move on to that bit, though, there was one other. What did you think of Sal what he said about Kosotar. Like, he sort of seems to have confirmed what we've been thinking about him all along, that he's from the outside somehow. But then it's also the ravings of a madman, so should we believe him or not?
I have no idea. I mean, I definitely think there's something up with Kosotar. I wouldn't put it past Bakker for him to just be a fake, but I actually feel like the more Bakker move is for him to actually be not just as messed up as he seems, but even more messed up than he seems. Like, to be some, like, just truly horrendous, mythical, historical something or not. I mean, he's clearly not, like, actually immortal in the traditional sense, or he's not super old, it seems like. I don't know. Actually. I think there's something going on there.
Yeah.
But Sarl is certainly an unreliable narrator.
But he's also, that would make him a Zawdunyani demon of sorts, which is immensely, again, interesting.
If he's literally from hell, you mean?
Yeah.
I didn't even think about the fact that he's literally, like, from there. I was just thinking he'd, like, been there. But damn, that would be crazy if he's like a demon that, if there are humans there, or demons can look like humans in some way, that would actually be pretty cool. That would be very D&D. I hadn't even thought about that. And this started as a campaign, right? They started playing this with D&D, so maybe there are origins from that. That's an interesting idea. I like that.
We'll see. So, I guess the last somewhat interesting thing here was the Esmenet, what we find out about how Esmenet went to try and get Mimara back, but failed. And maybe, we don't know yet how that story affected Mimara and her attitude towards Esmenet, but I think for the readers, at least, I feel like it redeemed Esmenet a bit more than...
Absolutely.
But... yeah, that whole conversation was very interesting too.
I think Akamian's, I mean, I continue to love his relationship with Mimara, and the way that he sort of cuts through her lies in some ways. I mean, I think Akamian himself is an unreliable narrator, obviously, in that, like, the way he describes Esmenet in the best terms in terms of why she sold her daughter, I think that's open for a little more dialogue. You know, I think there is a selfish aspect to that. It wasn't purely this, like, selfless, I'm going to save her from death. You know, I think that's maybe what Esmenet tells herself, and certainly what Akamian tells himself about what Esmenet did. But I don't know that that's entirely the case. That said, I love that Akamian kind of points out the hypocrisy in Mimara and, like, forces her to confront how similar she is with her mother. And her own, you know, why she hates her mom so much is sort of, you know, the root of it is her love and their similarity and, you know, all of that. It's just really emotionally impactful stuff.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, I'm curious to see where that goes, or if we ever get to see, since they're all moving so far away from men, whether we'll get to see an Esmenet Mimara present times interaction between the two of them. Yeah. Yep. I guess the other thing interesting about the Kiiri is I wonder if Bakker's, like, properly exploring addiction with that because of the rationalization that Akamian and Mimara both indulge in to decide this is bad for us, we should stop. But oh no, we can't do without it, so let's continue taking it because, I don't know, bad things will happen if we stop. So that was a very interesting conversation there too. And I think it's more than just the Kiiri that this section is
Absolutely.
maybe about, yeah.
And you see it too with Mimara. She's pregnant, and that's what gets her to finally cut it off, is she doesn't want to poison the baby, which is tragic because we know the baby isn't going to come out alive, which I feel like she should know, but she seems to not have registered that consciously.
Yeah. Yeah, she keeps preventing herself from thinking further about it. I there are two aspects of it, right? Like one, I don't know if she cares that much about revealing to Akamian that she's carrying his child, but I guess the second more important thing is maybe confronting the fact that the baby may not come out alive because of what Akamian told her about the judging eye. That's probably the thought she's preventing herself from having.
This is a bomb under the table too, in terms of like, not just emotionally for her, but like stillbirths. I mean, births ordinarily can be dangerous, but like when you have like a fetus that is, you know, damaged, like oftentimes the mother suffers too, right? And like I'm thinking of like ectopic pregnancies, which this is not that, but you know, like she could be physically in danger from her own body, but also, you know, she starts to give birth anywhere or starts to, you know, have a miscarriage. She's extremely vulnerable, surrounded by Sranc and who knows what else. Like it is whenever it comes to the forefront, it's going to be a real threat for her.
Yeah, yep, I agree. It is overall Mimara surrounded by all kinds of danger. I'm terrified for her.
Yeah, we'll see how all that goes. I have no idea where her story's going to go. She's a big question mark for me. I feel like Akamian is also due for like a pseudo-heroic death, but that also may be too traditional. I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if he dies like defending Mimara. That feels like an appropriate place for a story to go, but I don't think that is happening in this book. That would be that again. That would be like some Red Wedding shit if it did. But we'll see.
Yeah, I think, I don't know, hot take, I don't care who dies as long as it's at the end of the series. I just want to keep reading about my characters that I like until the end. Kill them all off towards the end. That's fine. That's fine by me.
Yeah, I feel that. You have to have certain characters to go through the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm okay with like a limited amount, but you certainly don't want, like even George R. R. Martin, you know, you think about how many characters are, if we just go by the TV show, you know, of the main characters actually survive until the end. Like it's the majority of the actual main characters. If you look at like the POV characters in the books, like most of the POV characters are still alive. So it's certainly you just from a narrative perspective, you don't want to get rid of all the characters people care about, you know.
Yeah, makes sense. It does. Are we ready to do quotes? Any other
Let's
topics?
do quotes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just have one because I know we're up against the clock, but page 282 in my we're all reading different editions. There is more than strength in accusation. There is the presumption of innocence, which is what makes it the first resort of the brokenhearted.
Nice. I like that.
That's a good one. I do love, I think this one is, it just speaks truthfully to me. Complexity begets ambiguity, which yields in all ways to prejudice and avarice. Complication does not so much defeat men as arm them with fancy.
Nice. Yeah, I highlighted that one too.
It's just so, that one just really feels very constantly prescient, I will say.
Mm-hmm. I have on page 258 in the Orbit paperback. Often men need only speak around things to come together and so remember what it means to speak through. The thing that breaks the wall between Sorvida and Soranga. I think they made a joke that I already think you're mad and then this follows. I like that.
Okay, maybe the last thing. Varsha, do you think Soranga and all the others are dead?
No, I think they were still fighting when we last saw them. So Sorva saved Sorvil, but the others might still make it. And I'm really hoping Soranga is one of them. we saw two people I kind of cared about die or be abandoned, right? The translator Obotwega, he was abandoned too. He was asked to stop and march.
That was sad. Yeah.
And I think three people besides Orwe that we've been following from that group of scions, I think would be too much. But also, they would lose the scions of all the kingdoms. That there would be significant fallout from that. I feel like strategically, Kellis needs to protect this group, and more than just that one person. But which also begs the question: why is Sorville important enough for them to save that way? Because they're far away from Sakarpas now. Their supply chain or whatever it is that they were expecting from there, is that still a thing? That was the reason we were given in the first book for why Sorville is important to Kellis. But is that still a thing now, or is it the Yathwerian connection that's making Kellis protect him?
I think there was a mention of he keeps pieces of places that he's conquered to keep that connection, to kind of not just overthrow and kill everyone, to kind of have that connection to the past, to make it easier to transition to, if somebody who he can control, to transition into the future. Something, I forget exactly what it was, but.
But that would be true of all the other scions, right? So either Sorville in and of himself is important, or Sakarpas is important for some reason. And I think the supply chain argument might be a bit stale at this point, so I'd like to know what else is going on there.
We'll see. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. So any other significant quotes that you guys want to bring up, or any other topics? Okay, then in that case, we'll see everyone next week. We haven't decided how many chapters. I think it'll probably be the next two because they're pretty long. But either 2 or 3 chapters for next week. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. We'll see you soon. Bye.